Good afternoon. Hi, Karin. How are you?
Hi, Meg. I'm well. I'm so sad, however, to not be sitting next to you. And Kathy, thank you for making all this possible as well.
So, Karin, why don't you go ahead and start and give a little background then?
Sure, happy to do that. Again, I'm very fond of upstate New York. I grew up in upstate New York. I went to college on Cayuga Lake, so it's the area is near and dear to me. Blue Highway Capital is a fund that was founded based on a mandate of investing primarily in rural-based locations, looking for rural-based businesses who were very interested in continuing to grow there and expand their footprint. We're one of 10 USDA funds, and we're the only woman-led fund doing this work in the country. We do fund only US-based businesses, however, having heard the Australian folks, but yes, they're coming here, so that may be an opportunity. So for us, it's really about how we can help us business in rural, in this case, rural, New York State, not only, from the financial standpoint, but what else can we bring to bear in terms of resources? And our goal is to help them create impact at the level of their employees and impact at the level of their community and the region, and hopefully the world, if they have products that go around the world. So you should tell us about your work as well.
So anyone who was here yesterday afternoon for the networking event might have walked across the street to the Salt City Market. It's directly across from the Marriott. So that is the project that I have lived and breathed for the last 3 years. It is a unique economic development strategy for the city of Syracuse that is really spearheaded by a foundation. So I serve as the executive director of the Allyn Family Foundation. It is a foundation that's based in central New York. It was founded in the 1950s, but it really is the family that ran a successful medical diagnostic equipment company called Allyn. And so that company, a 100-year-old company in 2015, went through actually a sale, sold the company to Hillrom, who has now been bought just recently by Baxter. So the family was very committed and has remained very committed for 5 generations to the central New York region, and really decided that they had a foundation, but at the time of the sale decided they were going to grow this foundation. And they looked at philanthropy in a very different way as part of their desire to grow the foundation. So the assets are about $135 million, and it's earmarked in grants and a lot of initiatives that we proactively do to actually build the economic vitality of the central New York region. So again, it goes really well with the Grow New York. So not only through grant making in Cayuga County, that's one of the vehicles we use. We have also been really very much related to mission-related investing, which you hear a lot in philanthropic circles. And for us, that means not only investing in the Cayuga Venture Fund early on, which was really critical to try and fund startup companies, mostly in Cayuga County that were coming out of Cornell and Tompkins County, but we also founded 3 years ago in partnership with the Central New York region, the Armory Square Venture, which is a venture capital fund. So we have a number of our assets in both of those venture capital funds to try and essentially grow and support the ag business in Central New York. And then the project, the Salt City Market, was really an urban initiative that was trying to address a few different needs in the city. That was a great concept, but they couldn't really find either a not-for-profit or an economic development entity to take it on. And we just woke up one day and said, we're going to do this. So we formed a new not-for-profit called the Syracuse Urban Partnership. And through that, as you might have seen across the street from the hotel, it's a $26 million project. The first floor is 24,000 square feet. It was an opportunity. We knew that Syracuse especially has a lot of hidden talent in terms of new Americans with a lot of cooking skills. So we have 10 food vendors that represent countries from all over the world that have been refugees in the city. They are all their own businesses. We then had Salt City Coffee, which has a coffee and in the morning goes to the Salt City Bar. And then the other need in the community, especially on the first floor, was actually a need for a downtown grocery store, specifically one that had really good access to fresh produce and fruit and vegetables. We partnered a lot with USDA on the Double Up Food Bucks for that, to be able to serve the neighborhood, but also just to be able to meet the community need. The second floor of the building is not-for-profits, and then we have 26 mixed-income apartments. Like a lot of other cities, we have a lot of high-end apartments in the city of Syracuse, and then we have a lot of areas that have just our low-income housing tax credit projects. We wanted to prove that with 26 apartments, you could marry both of them, and that you would have better health outcomes and other outcomes, as well as meeting the kind of housing desires of really the next generations. So that project came on board last January and has been an amazing success, both for Syracuse and the region.
And I think it's interesting, Meg. I think it's very exciting. I look forward to coming out and seeing it. And it's interesting because as we think about the small companies that we want to fund, they're always looking for outlets in urban areas. And I think there is the need to co-mix the ideas about, you may grow your produce in upstate New York, but you want to get it to urban locations, and having a market or having the ability to be able to partner with that project in particular or other projects like it, I think provides the urban dweller the opportunity to get access to local food and healthy for you food. So I think it's really excellent. We'd love to know more about some of the businesses that are in there as well, because that would be something that Blue Highway may be interested in helping to grow as well.
It's great because they are all part of an ecosystem, right? They are their own space and they lease their own little kind of 600, 900 square foot space, but they also work very much in partnership. So if they are all going to buy from the same vendor and they're using local markets, we also use some of the other local urban farms, Brady Faith Farm specifically, Jubilee, to try and collectively purchase so that each of them, from our perspective, it's better efficiencies. We don't want trucks coming in 5 times a day in the back of the building. So there's been a lot of efficiencies that way as well in terms of trying to partner and support local ag and local business.
And that makes a lot of sense in terms of how to help the companies are in a lot of cases helping each other. They're learning from each other, I'm sure, in terms of it. They obviously are standing on their own as well, but that I think creates continues to create that ecosystem that then gets other businesses interested in how do I get involved, or I can do this down the street, and that continues to grow those. I mentioned to someone the other day, it's concentric circles about raising money. You talk to people close to you who really love what you're doing, appreciate your passion and your drive and your ability, and they will help you. If they don't have the capital, they'll make those introductions, and you just have to keep growing those concentric circles, because ultimately you'll find the capital that you need. You have to be a little perseverant in doing it, but you can. So have those businesses been funded directly by the foundation, or have they been funded with external partners as well?
So the foundation built out each one of the stalls. So essentially we own predominantly the kitchen equipment, but we felt really strongly that each of the businesses needed to have their kind of own skin in the game if they were going to really want to be successful. And I should say that we had over 128 entrepreneurs apply for 10 spots in the market. So there really is a huge need for these types of concepts, right? There's a joke that says, if you want to lose money, open a restaurant, right? Because I think that it is the easiest way. It's a very labor intensive, and it can also just be one of, not every restaurant clearly is successful. So we require that each of the vendors take out or put in their own capital between 20 and 25,000. Out of the 10, 3 of them had, they had financial challenges. And so the Allyn Foundation worked with a local bank, Pathfinder. So we did, and really they were very willing to do the character-based lending. We also provided tremendous amount of technical assistance for the year before we opened the market. Once a vendor was selected, we worked with them on, we brought in consultants to help them with menu, with pricing. We brought in consultants on brand for their name and developing their websites. We brought in legal consultants to actually set up their businesses for them. So there was a lot of technical assistance, but I'm really pleased to say, and they all, of course, wrote really great business plans, and we kept going back and refining the business plans. All of them have already, within 6 months of opening, the concept has really just kind of been blown out of the water, which has been great, to the point where not only have they been able to pay back all of the debt that they had to borrow, but many of them are really on track to even beat their business plans of what they had expected. And so our role has been to continue to support them. We overwrite, we cover a lot of events that try and bring in people into the market. We try and make it as a community gathering space. We do have 2 other social enterprises that cover both the security concept, which we call the Ambassador Program. The market, you might not have noticed, is right next to the Rescue Mission, which is the largest homeless shelter in the city of Syracuse. We partner with the Rescue Mission, and we have some of their folks that are called ambassadors. They walk around the neighborhood, they walk people to their car, so whether it's real or perceived safety, they're kind of safety with the customer service bent. And then we also do very environmentally conscious, all of the vendors do their own composting, but also just in terms of, we use all melamine, we try and use, there's not really a soda machine anywhere in there, there's a lot of water dispensers, but we also have a contract in partnership with our Catholic Charities here, a program called Dignity Works. They're the ones who do all of the cleaning, all of the dishwashing, and everything else as well. So again, the whole concept around it is really a social enterprise, and trying to really figure out how can you marry this idea of bringing together partners with a collective vision and bringing in also the services and technical assistance to make people successful.
Well, and that makes, I mean, again, it seems as though not only is it an economic development opportunity, but it does create that ecosystem to attract other types of, whether it's other businesses or other social enterprise ventures, because they can see that that's successful, and it just breeds onto itself. So it's very interesting. For us, it's interesting. I mean, I think, we really look at financial metrics and impact metrics. So I wanted to, financial metrics for most investors, we have a dedicated fund. We raised our capital from some foundations and a lot of banks, and the Farm Credit Bank system in particular. We've got a couple of local New York State-based banks that supported our rural-based efforts. But, the impact metrics are equally important to us. And those for us are really to help create quality jobs, not just jobs, but quality jobs, which really, are measured, and we do measure them, measured by whether or not, not just a living wage, but whether you've got a fair and engaging workplace, whether you've got a chance for training and career ladders, so that there really is a belief and a value system that the owners of the businesses are passing and sharing their prosperity as they continue to grow the business, with the employees. So we work really closely at day one with those companies to see if we've aligned our values. And many times at the end of the day, it sounds good in the beginning of the conversation, but oftentimes that's too hard. No, I'm going to keep the profits, and I'll give people a Christmas bonus or this or that. So it's interesting. We've walked away from opportunities, but the other piece is also to sustain rural communities. And I think, to create that, that's a harder metric to actually measure. But I think, the kinds of work, for instance, that you're doing, I mean, you can see over time when you support a small business that gets bigger, they sometimes spin out other businesses. They may attract related businesses, especially in the agriculture
Yeah.
space, the food and eggs is such a rich environment right now. And knowing that New York State has always been number 3 in the nation in terms of growing food. I mean, there's already a magnet to upstate New York, but it's really interesting and exciting for us to find those companies where they may be in a smaller community that if they were to close or move, that would really have a huge impact, a negative economic impact on that community or that region. So that's part of our strategy, is to look for where we can make the most impact with our capital, that in turn allows those businesses to make an impact in their region as well.
And I think that's really an important point too, because I think so often you think of just the investment and the return, and really it is the community impact in so much of the work in rural communities or urban communities. Like we know, for example, it's a 2,000 square foot little grocery store. It was very difficult. We couldn't get any of the major grocery stores, right, to come downtown, even though the percentage of people living in downtown Syracuse, but you go to downtown Rochester, you go to a lot of other communities, and it's the same problem, right? And so the business model just does not work. But how do you kind of translate this business model versus this kind of benevolent community development? And in this case, working with something like a co-op, it's the Syracuse Cooperative Market, who agreed to come in. And we are trying to be a partner. We're trying to subsidize. We were really lucky. We have a really great relationship with the New York State Health Foundation and 2 other health foundations that also really wanted to be able to have this grocery store downtown. And we've been trying to track the metrics related to that and the residents around the grocery store. But even for them, it was a really big, risky endeavor, right? So we are really underwriting that. We were fortunate to get some new market tax credits for the project, which also because of the community impact and the community benefit. So it is trying to put, for any type of deal or any type of project or company, thinking about the capital stack in a really creative way, I think it is really kind of the future of how to deliver those returns to the community.
Right. No, I think that does, it's great. You mentioned the capital stack. I think for a lot of small businesses, I mean, they have to think about, where does the capital come from? And sometimes to think out of the box a little bit, talk to someone about project-based financing or place-based financing. There's a lot of investors thinking, as you are thinking, that, it's not just, I mean, for us, we do fund one business at a time in a particular, not in a particular area, but I think it's the combination of the work and knowing that there are a lot of venture investors also in the region. It's the whole continuum of capital, right? It's the New York, it's the seed capital that's coming from the awards later on, and the student awards we just heard about, and all the way to sort of the work that you can do, or the $2 to $5 million that we can bring into a company. But it's challenging when you're getting off the ground. It seems very daunting, but I think that it seems to me, and again, I'm not based in New York State, I'm based in New England, that there are a lot of wonderful resources that entrepreneurs and small businesses can tap into in New York State. So we're glad to be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think there are, and I think looking outside the traditional kind of concepts of what people are thinking is really, because there's so many people that really understand that it's not just a huge economic driver for New York State as food and ag, but they're also connecting all of the overall health benefits and the social determinants of health and everything else that all get connected to it. So I think there's a much greater awareness that there might have never been before about why this is an industry and an area that is so critical to be able to nurture, support, and grow. And I've just seen within the funders that I work with that there is more and more willingness to kind of fund some of the seed capital that you talked about through outright grants, a lot of low interest loans that we do. We do a lot of loan guarantees, things that are very creative to be able to support that as such a critical part of not only the industry and the economic vitality of Central New York and all of New York, but just also for the people of New York. So couldn't agree more.
Right. But it's interesting when you talk about, not just food and ag, because you're right, the whole industry is spilling out, looking at how to be engaged environmentally, how to look at climate change in what a farmer may do differently. How do you increase yield without, fertilizers or with nasty pesticides? How do you be more organic? How do you marry the business you're doing with your environment, with your community? And we're seeing some really interesting companies that are highly engaged in thinking about that, or really having a whole, like a recycle feature, so that the farm may spit out something that otherwise someone else can use. It's waste to the farmer, but it's not waste, to the next type of business. And those are really exciting for us when we look at those that are just really full circle businesses. And food safety is another huge area that I think is developed. And I'm sure with a lot of the work that Cornell and other universities are doing as well, that's a great opportunity. The whole logistics and access, and how you create less of a carbon footprint by transporting the food. So there's just we see a lot of companies that are coming to look at how to participate in some of that. And it's not necessarily just growing a crop or packaging a healthy for you product, but it's an industry that I think continues to grow, and hopefully companies that are not in New York State are thinking about perhaps relocating there.
Yeah. And I would just piggyback too. I think what's happened because of the central New York region and all of New York, but especially the Finger Lakes, there has been the climate change issues, the quality issues related to all of the runoff into the lakes, the water sources, and when we think about the New York State and what are some of the wonderful natural resources that we have that will help the region in the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years, it is those beautiful natural resources of water and in some ways utilities. Even though they're very high for New York State, we do have good clean energy. So that has also been a driving factor that has made people think about New York State, business in New York State, in a whole different lens than it has before. And I would just end by saying that I think it's also been a bit, there's been a bit dynamic with the ag industry and the environmentalists. I mean, that's what we have seen where we are, especially because climate change, runoff, how that has affected some of the water quality, and now to be able to bring everybody to the table as they are doing through things like the different lake associations, the Nature Conservancy, different watershed regions, even the DOT DOT has gotten very involved. And I think that's really important to just also note that those partners seem to be working together more than they ever have before.
That's and it just talks about the collaboration that is needed, I think, to grow businesses. And you also mentioned other sources of funding. I mean, people would say equity is expensive. People will say to us, "Your money's expensive," and we say, "Well, we bring a lot. Hopefully, we bring something more than the money." But to be able to get a lot of small companies, they have access to grants, or whether it's federal grants like the Small Business Innovation Research grants. Those are wonderful sources, and we'd love to encourage our companies all the time to look for those kinds of non-dilutive capital sources that help them continue to grow, or perhaps invent an additional product line, or something that's inventive technology. And those are that's just part of creating that business. So to the extent that a lot of funders like to see collaboration among businesses or among some of the different stakeholders, I think it's good to see that people are talking the same language these days.
Yep.
And thank you, Meg, for helping us close out the symposium today. It was a really great dynamic conversation about those kind of connections that you're talking about. So thanks.